Hi, I'm Reed Peterson, and welcome to Grief Refuge. Thanks for listening today and letting Grief Refuge be a resource to help you cope with your loss and support you through the grieving process. I'd like to personally welcome you, whether this is your first time listening or if you've heard my voice before. The mission of Grief Refuge is to provide daily support to help you find peace and purpose after experiencing a death-related loss. At Grief Refuge, we offer our signature Grief Refuge app, our webinars, groups, and retreats to ensure that you're comforted, soothed, validated, and cared for. Grief can be very isolating, can be ridden with guilt, shameful, and it can hurt in ways that seem impossible to endure. Grief Refuge is here to help. I'm glad you've found this Grief Refuge podcast because here we host authentic and meaningful conversations about people's grief journeys. We go deep into the emotional hardships, and we hope that what you hear on this podcast helps you feel better about your own grief journey. Grief is one of the hardest things a human can go through. I'm honored you're here, and I promise to do everything I can to provide the best support to you. Before we begin today's conversation, I have two important things to share. Because of the nature and the depth of this topic, it may be more beneficial to not multitask while listening. Rather, I invite you to use this time for your self-care and personal reflection. Please use this time to settle in, feel grounded, and allow your grief-related feelings to run their course. If anything, please use this time to mourn your loss. Also, the Grief Refuge podcast publishes episodes once or twice a month. If you need more support at this time, please download the Grief Refuge app. It's full of supportive audio to help guide and soothe you throughout your grief journey. A short testimonial from a real grieving person named Melissa said, "I'm so blessed to have found this app. The Grief Refuge app answered a lot of my questions, and it's really helping me get through my grief." So the Grief Refuge app is easy to find. It's on your phone's app store, and it's a free download. So all you have to do is search for Grief Refuge and download it to get daily support. For today's conversation, I would like to share a guest interview with you. My guest is Yuivany Aguilar, who lives in California and has a powerful story to share about the loss of her dear twin daughters and how she worked through her grief. Yuivany is a caregiver by nature. She's a professional nurse and has a lot of wisdom to share about navigating grief. Much of her wisdom has been well documented in her book titled Pearls of the Soul, which is available for purchase on Amazon. Please enjoy the conversation with Yuivany. Hello, Grief Refuge. Welcome back if you've heard my voice before, and welcome if this is your first time listening. I'm here with a special guest today. We are joined by Yuivany Aguilar, who has a story and some experience in what's sounding to me like some great wisdom to share regarding her grief journey. Yuivany, welcome to the Grief Refuge podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I am so excited to share my story with you and with your audience here.
Awesome. Now, there's a few angles I can take when we talk about this experience of specifically with grieving. And we can dive right into your grief journey. We can talk about your loss and losses, but also knowing that you've authored a book. I always get so curious about the writing process because when people grieve in the United States, a lot of like what's offered as advice, throwing air quotes around advice, is giving advice to journal. And so, knowing that you've authored a book, and the book is called Pearls of the Soul, right?
Yes.
Has writing always been a part of your life?
Yeah, I think I love writing, but especially during this hard time, I found that very, very healing. it was a moment that I didn't have anyone available to talk, but I had always my notepad or my cell phone, so I can write it down, all my emotions. I can put my emotions and my thoughts in a paper. And then when I get back to that and read it, I will find, I will feel, I'll be surprised, how I was in that moment of my life.
Hmm. Yes, that is definitely a beauty to be able to reflect upon what has been written and to be able to help provide documentation and recognition of where things were at emotionally, where things were at psychologically, and looking back at like how we've grown and in what ways we've grown. And you also mentioned, you kind of gave me a golden nugget that I kind of want to dive into right now. And you mentioned that through hard times, there wasn't as much availability for you. And so I would really love to probe into that, but I really feel inclined first to ask you, what's been the experience that has led to some of this hardship in your healing process?
Yeah, first of all, I think losing a loved one or knowing that they are going to die at some point is very, very painful. And you can be paralyzed and you have no control of things that are coming. And sometimes you don't have even a plan. You don't have a plan. You don't know what's coming next. And then my journey was like that. I had twins, and they both had a genetic condition called Alstrom syndrome. It's very particular syndrome. Um, it was very challenging, painful, and devastating emotion that it came to my heart. I didn't know how to deal with this. And the only thing that I found was writing was my mechanism to escape from the reality and kind of have my own world where I can put in paper every single thing that I was feeling. And then the paper or the cell phone could handle everything, you know. Nobody will tell me, don't say that, or nobody will give me any advice. I will just write whatever I want, and I will feel that my emotions are getting out of my heart and out of my mind, my thoughts. So that was something that I did along my journey.
Yeah, thanks for articulating that, Yuivany. So is on my end, I feel like it's easy to assume that in your social network, I don't know if that means family or friends or kind of a greater community perspective, but within that social network, there might have been some judgments or some unsolicited advice thrown at your way. Is that true?
Yeah, I think even people who have gone through the same situation, they will give you some kind of advice, even uh, even if they don't know that they are giving you an advice, they will say something, And I know they come from the place from love. But the problem is sometimes you don't need any advice. You just need somebody who can listen to you. And just by listening, I think they do a lot. But we feel like listening is not enough, and we have to say something. We have to fix something. And there is nothing that it can be fixed at a time. Nothing, no formula, nothing that they can tell you will help you with that pain at that moment.
Throughout your journey, I agree with you. I think there really isn't anything to fix. I have been trained in a model that is mostly focused on caregiving. And I call them my four values: showing up with deep listening, no judgment, empathy, and right now I'm forgetting the fourth. So we'll focus on these three. But I know that many people say it's just hard to find people that have those qualities. And so for you, I'm so curious if you knew you needed that and people were giving these unsolicited advice, or you might have felt judged, or felt in a certain way that they were trying to fix you, were you able to basically tell them to stop, or did you connect with your journaling as far as, writing through that experience?
I think it was both. I think I knew, uh, I think when you have a friendship for so long, you know who they are. So I knew who were my friends that they can listen to you without judging or without giving you an advice. And I knew who were those who will tell you what to do or how to handle something. So in my case, I was not available for those people that they are trying to give me advice, and I had this very clear boundary that I told them, if I need something, I will reach out to you. And in fact, I reach out to my friends that I know they are going to listen to me without telling me what to do. And at the same time, I was writing every day pretty much, or every time that I had a very painful experience or very like a new diagnosis or a new hard thing that I have to face, I will write it down right away.
I think that requires a lot of discipline. Um, I'm sure that there's many people listening right now who are probably telling themselves, I should be writing also. I should be journaling. So they're shooting themselves, but at the same time, they may not have the energy or they may not have the desire. And I'm very curious, knowing that writing has been such a critical tool for you in your healing journey, and helping you gain perspective through grieving. What are your thoughts in regards to some of these people that are telling themselves they should, but for whatever rhyme or reason, they're just not?
Yeah, we all go through challenges that everybody handle it differently. You know, grieving doesn't have a protocol to follow. We don't have any prescription for that. So I think if somebody is listening, they have to find what it works for them, you know. And for me, it seems like writing works very well, but not for everyone. Like you said, not all the time I had the same attitude or had the same energy to write it down my thoughts in the paper. But it was my way to connect to the world. Pretty much, I was writing kind of poems and how I feel and how I handle things on Facebook. So I was posting from time to time, and I found that people who is on my social network, they were telling me, "Oh, you helped me with this. Oh, I like that way that you express your emotions." Or kind of this feedback, and I feel kind of like my pain was not only um, teaching me something, also was helping other people to realize that this is not happening to one person, but this happens every day, everywhere. Yeah, I think one word they can grab from whatever I was writing, it was enough for somebody to kind of resonate with what I was experiencing at the time. But
Mm,
it is very unique journey, and very particular for everyone.
yeah. I just got caught up in some thoughts about the condition that your twins had, and I'm is it fair to assume that your grief process started long before their health deteriorated?
Yeah, I am a nurse by profession, so I know, I kind of know what's coming next, and I know how to interpret the labs and this, and I do my research also. Um, yeah, they were born, and when they were months old, one of my twins, they were diagnosed with cardiomyopathy, which is a condition of the heart that is not working really well. And from there, my journey started. So then they diagnosed Camilla with the same thing. They have to transfer to Stanford. At Stanford, they thought they may need a heart transplant. So my mind was focusing on that. But 6 months after, they found out that it's not only one problem, it's more. So it was just kind of like a one after the other, news that it was not really a good news for me, but it was every time it was getting worse and worse. So I think at that point I knew that because I read what that was about and I knew the potential, you know, chances that they had at some point they may die.
Yeah, I'm trying to put on my shoes of empathy and, really acknowledge how difficult that process may have been. And I'm thinking about isolation too, Yuivany. Did you feel like, you were kind of, for lack of a better word, managing this all by yourself?
Yeah, I think it's kind of stages in my life when my Isabella, my first child who passed away, she died. My whole dynamic it was different. Like I was married, my husband was with me. I had Camila, my other twin daughter. I had my mom who was here. I am from Peru, and she came to visit me and help me. So I had this kind of family support. So I kind of had this support even financially. But after that, Isabella passed away a year after I got divorced, so which is another loss. So it was kind of like another navigation, different way, but it was a loss that I experienced in my life. And then I have to deal with the loss of Camila's custody because she has to be with the dad 1 week and with me 1 week. So it was just kind of like a one after the other events that I was going through that impacted me so much. But I think in every stage I had support, different way, different forms, but I had this kind of support from family, friends, and myself. I think I needed to know how to be strong for myself.
In what ways did the family and friends support show up for you?
The beginning with Isabella was my mom, my family, my husband was my main support, my closest support, because after that situation happened, all people who are with you, they are gone. They have a life too. They disappear slowly. And then that was my main support. So I had this family support, friend support. Yeah, and then I had my therapist as well. My therapist, grief support, like, listening videos, podcasts, like your podcast and those things like that. It's really very helpful to listen other stories and then learn from them, because everybody can get something from other stories. So that was my main resource. I was reading a lot. Even if I didn't want to, I had to get through this.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like a brave journey too. I think of, the endurement of more than one loss, and losses, perhaps overwhelming. And I think to myself, I'm so curious, Yuivany, if there were like moments that, it may have felt too hard, and then there was glimmers of hope that showed up for you. Do you have any like examples of like something that was a bit for that, as a metaphor, like a lifeline that helped you in some of those darkest moments of despair or unbearableness?
Yeah, I think when I told you what happened with Isabella, I had this family support, but when Camila passed away, my second twin daughter, it was completely different picture. I was divorced. My mom was not here. We were in the middle of the pandemic. And then financially, I had some kind of impact, because I was not working. So it came all of these components to my life, plus the big thing, my daughter died. So at that moment, I realized that it's only me who has to work through this, because I know I have my therapist, I have my mom, my family, my closest friends. But at the end of the day, Nobody's with me 24 hours. And I know it's not an easy journey. I was going through desperation, pain, isolation. I didn't have hope. I wanted to die, you know. I thought I had no meaning. My life had no meaning anymore and no purpose because I lost my daughters, my husband, my family fade away, you know, the whole thing. So, but at the same time, I understood that they are still with me. So I have to do a lot of I have like if I can tell you how many notebooks I wrote, it's just a lot, like maybe 20. Writing was my main mechanism of, I think, to freedom, probably can say that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you put on the hindsight goggles and connect the dots, do you think some of the shifting happened through the writing process? I'm so curious, there's an inclination or a specific moment where there was that shift in perspective of, hey, they'll always be with me. Was there one specific aha moment, or was there kind of like an escalation for you to get to that awareness?
I think for me, how writing helped me was kind of clear my mind and my heart from the negativity and from the toxicity. But I also was doing meditation. And I remember for me, it was kind of like a cleaning my mind and my heart from the toxicity because I was so upset with God, with life, with my ex-husband, with myself for me taking decisions that I was not good. You know, blaming yourself, finding the excuses to be in a toxic environment. So writing was kind of the way that I was clearing everything out. But at the same time, meditation was something that it helped me. And I remember one particular meditation when I did with Tony Robbins that they said, imagine or remember the time that you were with somebody that you love so much and feel that moment. And at that time, both of my twins, they were not here physically. And I started feeling that moment when they were in my arms for the first time. And I really felt the love and the connection that I have with them. And I realized it's not about the time, it's not about the space, it's about love. So it's kind of like I put my daughters back to my heart. I bring my daughters back to my heart. And then I feel this energy, that they are alive in my heart. My altar is my heart. They are with me. So probably many people can say that's not true, but if you believe that, it's your truth. So you just go with that, and I think that's what works for me.
Yeah, actually, I feel that in my heart. That's a beautiful story and a beautiful reflection. And I couldn't agree with you more that if, for you listening, if you believe in it, that is your truth. And hold that as something strong within your own presence, because there will be too many people who try to tell you to do something else or that you should blank. I know everybody listening right now is shaking their head and agreeing with that. So thank you, Yuivany, because that was very touching and very meaningful just to listen to hear you or hearing you say that. Much appreciated. Sometimes I get these moments where I have such like a physical sensation that it's hard to continue to talk. And this is one of those moments. Gosh, that's such a beautiful articulation. And I think that when I think about your experience of the writing, like, did you have moments? Well, actually, I'm going to circle back because you mentioned some of the toxicity and some of the negativity, and that's really intriguing to me. So, would you mind educating us a little bit about like what that means to you?
Yeah, what that means to me, I was, like I said, I was blaming other people about my life, God, I was sometimes I was hoping for God to give me a better outcome, and it was not happening. I was praying and praying and praying, but it didn't happen. The miracle didn't happen. But then I was blaming myself, my husband, or pretty much I was in a situation that I didn't care anymore. I was jealous at people that they have kids. I was just a person who has no empathy for anyone. I was just feeling that I have the right to say whatever I want, to blame people, to judge people, and I don't care, you know? It was just this kind of like I don't care anymore. I don't believe in God, you know? I was one time I remember the chaplain came to me and he said, let's pray. I said, I don't want to pray. I hate God, you know? I don't know if he exists here. Where is he? This kind of emotions and reactions that you experience, and you just are upset with everything, with life, with yourself, with a chaplain who doesn't have to do anything about your tragedy, if you want to call like that way. But yeah, and when I write those emotions and I go back and read it, and I feel, oh, Yuivany, oh my gosh, you are so in much pain, you know? What is this? And it gave me, it's like having an X-ray, you know, when you have an X-ray and you can see the shape of your lungs and how is that, it's kind of doing something, but of your emotions, of your emotional state. And I was just there to diagnose myself, and I was in very bad shape.
That is a great analogy. I love the medical terminology used, knowing that you're a nurse too. I was thinking specifically, I was like, oh, I like to talk about like being in the weeds with something, and then somehow taking a step back and getting a bird's eye view of something. And I was like, oh, to me, it sounds like your journaling process, where when the emotions were that raw and that real, intense in the moment, you got them out of you, and then being able to reflect back upon them, you had a little bit of that bird's eye view where you took a step outside of like being in the weeds of your experience, and having a higher self view of saying, oh, okay, now I kind of understand like all this intensity of what's making me feel this way. This is what it's doing to my life. And that helped provide like some clarity as far as, you know, what kind of choices you want to make going forward with that. That's really powerful, Yuivany. I think that, you know, we've unpacked something really helpful here. And now I'm hoping that for all of you listening, that if you've had those reasons or those excuses to not journal, now you're convinced that there is some value in the journaling experience. So just to plug, there's a feature on the Grief Refuge app where you can journal without having to write it all itself. You can voice dictate it too. So if you want that convenience, let technology work with you. But coming back to your experience, Yuivany, it's just incredible. It's incredible. And so here you are today. Do you continue to write?
Yeah. On the journaling part, I want to add something else. It's not like I will go journal, dear diary. No, I will go crying, you know. Crying is another way. There is another component as well. It's not like I just being so focused on writing. No, I was crying. I was desperate. These other components, crying also helps you to alleviate your pain. So crying, writing, and I think that was really intense. Both of things, like you know, feeling your emotions helps a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. There's a concept in the model that I learned from, and it's called embrace the pain of your loss. And a lot of people talk about how difficult that is. They might get caught up on their own definition of what embrace means, but I like to, you know, generalize it and saying like, just give yourself space to feel the feelings, really feel them out, you know. be a hot mess. It's got its value, especially in the long term. Um, I'm not sure, Yuivany, if you would be here in this moment being able to speak about your experience with such wisdom had you not allowed yourself to feel the feelings.
Um, yeah, now I feel like feelings are yeah, it's a way that we communicate with our soul, I think, what it comes what is stored in your soul, it will come out. Um, and I feel like I did the work. I follow all kind of recommendations, if you want to say that way, and I found my way. And I feel like there is so much we can say, but this has no meaning if you don't do the work. You have to do the work. So like you said before, oh, you seem like you are very disciplined. I was determined to get better. I was determined to honor their life. I was determined to be the one who will say, hey, I did this for you. You are not here physically, but you are in my heart. You still are my drive, because I thought when they died, this concept, I lost something. For me, it causes separation. I lost, it's far away. But when I realized in this gap, it was suffering, I just closed that gap with love. And I love my child. I love they are with me. I know they are with me. And that gap closes and there is no space for suffering, which is different. I have pain, but it doesn't bother me anymore. It's kind of honoring them because the pain is a way that I acknowledge it's painful, but it's a healthy way to honor their life. Now, different form of life, you know, as a soul, as a divine self.
Thank you so much for saying that. I think that's a testament to the power of determination. What a beautiful articulation. And so it also seems to have produced something, with an intention to help others, which is the publishing of your book, Pearls of the Soul. I feel like now would be a great time to tell us a bit more about this book, like who's it for, and what motivated you or inspired you to write this.
Yeah, what motivated me was one of my friends, she followed me on Facebook and she said, I help her. And I didn't know that. And she said, why don't you write a book? And I thought I would put all my collection of poems in an ebook and I would publish. But I asked my siblings to give me an advice and they said, oh, this is good, but you should add your story. So the people will know when you wrote this poem. And for me to talk about my story was not easy. And actually, that causes more healing than I thought. Every time I have to go back and read, what I wrote, it causes a lot of pain. But the more I did, the more I healed. It was a good, I think it was a good thing that happened to me. And then it just happened, And then I added practices that we can do. So I recommend in the book what works for me. So like a gratitude, forgiveness, very simple things that we forget in the daily basis to practice, like breathing, how powerful is the breathing. Just that alone is a very powerful tool that we have accessible 24 hours, right? So I wanted to kind of give a hug to all those women that they experience losses, even with a child or with a husband or any other kind of loss, that they are not alone. I wanted to tell them that I love them. And when I mean I love them is like when I have this pain, I feel that if I think on another human being that is experiencing the pain and I send them love, it's a healing tool also because love can go to the universe, you know? And yeah, that was my desire to share this specifically for women.
Mm. It sounds like a great resource and a great just source of what sounds like hope. It sounds like love. It sounds like care. And to me, it sounds like it was written from your heart to another woman's heart. And as a man, I'm not sure I'll fully understand that, but at least I'll pretend I understand it right now. However, I just from too many personal experiences, I know that it has its place and it has its power and it has its empowerment. So thank you for writing Pearls of Wisdom. Is it available to purchase at this time?
Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Okay,
Yeah.
so search for Pearls of the Soul on Amazon.
Yeah, with my name, Yuivany Aguilar, and it's available in Spanish and English because my main language is Spanish. Yeah. So I wrote that first in Spanish and then English. Mhm.
Fantastic. And so it's called Pearls of the Soul and it's on Amazon and Yuivany Aguilar is the author. This has been just a wonderful conversation, Yuivany. I'm grateful for your time and your honesty and your openness. And thank you so much for being a part of Grief Refuge.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the interview today. I really appreciate your time and trust in Grief Refuge with all the stories, the wisdom, the insights shared here on this podcast. Remember that if you need more support right now, download the Grief Refuge app. It's a great and convenient way to validate and support you as you grieve and heal. Please search Grief Refuge on your phone's app store now. Also, please do us a favor and leave a rating and review for the Grief Refuge podcast. Your feedback is listened to, it's valued, and we use it to help better serve your needs. So please rate and review the Grief Refuge podcast on this podcast player that you're using now. Thank you. Take care. Keep honoring your heart. Keep honoring your grief. Keep listening to your heart. Be kind to yourself and talk to you soon.